Good evening. This is Ali Evan Shaheen. Today is January 13th, 2024, and this is a PowerPoint presentation on Module 1, Chapter 1 of the textbook for FES 4226 EMS Special Operations with Dr. Lindsay as the professor for the course. Chapter 1 presented a what would you do type question in the end of the text, and we are going to be going over that text, going over each question individually, and how to manage the issue that was presented in the text. So at the end of the text, we were told that we are responding to a structural collapse with reports of multiple victims trapped. Unfortunately, we're just an EMS agency, and we don't have the capabilities of structural collapse training or anything like that to mitigate the hazard right away as soon as we roll up on scene. The closest fire department that can assist is 30 minutes away, along with a 30-minute delay in response. So we're looking at being on scene for approximately 1 hour before we're getting any type of help or assistance from a team or a fire department that is capable of mitigating this type of emergency. So some of the facts that we could come up with for this include a structural collapse has occurred within the county of an EMS department that I work for. There are reports of multiple people trapped due to the collapse. We do not have any special operations team nor a technical rescue team either. The nearest structural collapse team is at least 30 minutes away, but it'll take them 1 hour to reach us because of where we are in the county. And then we were presented with a little bit of an afterthought, obviously, from the county commissioners. They want an answer to a question about preparation in the future. So there's no budget for a technical rescue team for our organization, and the board of directors wants a presentation on how our units would respond to this type of incident. Unfortunately, in this case, the county commissioners are kind of giving us a problem and then giving us another problem by telling us they don't have the money to fix that problem. So it sounds pretty accurate for a county commission, so not very surprising. We're just going to shuffle through. These are just some photos of some structural collapse incidents. So there are 3 questions that need to be answered from the text. Question number 1, what factors should you consider when putting together your presentation? Question number 2, what should be your response to establishing a special operations team for structural collapse? And lastly, what would be your recommendation? I'm assuming our overall recommendation. So some factors you should consider, or at least I'm considering when I was thinking about putting this presentation together and sitting on the opposite side of the commissioners and tasking them with how I would tackle this incident. So a few things that I have listed out here: a response time analysis, preferably how much our response is going to take to get there, and then what the next due unit or next due agency that is available to help with this type of emergency, what their response time analysis is looking like as well. Resource availability, we'll talk about kind of what's available within the county to help us with this issue. Cost benefit analysis, obviously they said they don't have the money to solve this issue, but we will talk about different approaches for the cost benefit analysis. A risk assessment, mutual aid training, training in preparedness, community awareness, alternative solutions, and long-term planning. So I know I kind of threw a lot of stuff out there, a lot of topics to discuss, and I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about each one. So response time analysis, so we're going to assess our current response for different types of emergency situations, preferably for a structural collapse, and then show them that this is the delay that occurs when this type of incident happens, and who we're waiting for, where they're coming from, and God forbid if that next closest team isn't available, then who's the third closest team, and highlight all those different types of impacts that a delayed response profile could induce for the community. Resource availability. I'd like to evaluate our existing resources within our EMS department. So identify what type of gaps we have in specialized equipment, especially for something that like this structural collapse incident. Is there stuff that we have in storage that we haven't used? Is there stuff that we don't use that we can get rid of and free up some money to buy some stuff that we might need for this type of incident? And look at that. And then also a lot of collaboration with nearby agencies, nearby departments, trying to build a better mutual aid package with neighboring agencies in terms of splitting the cost of equipment and trying to develop more resources within the surrounding community. I mean, I know structural collapse is pretty much a high risk, low frequency event, so it is understandable that a lot of people don't want to spend the money to keep up with that equipment because it is expensive and it's hardly used. So if multiple agencies pool together and share equipment, that could be a way that we could save some money in response to trying to buy some equipment for a structural collapse. So obviously I'd provide a detailed financial analysis on the cost of a special operations team, the cost of equipment, and kind of compare those costs to what we have now or what we don't have now, vice versa. And then a risk assessment. A risk assessment is going to tell us, all right, is this a high potential to happen again in the future? Is this a one-time thing? Do we not really know? So we have to consider all possible reasons why structural collapse might happen. And is in the area, is this an earthquake zone? Is this an area where there's landslides? Different factors that can contribute to a structural collapse, especially those places out on the west coast like California and stuff like that. Collaboration opportunities, as I said, working together with local fire and EMS agencies around, pooling together resources instead of everybody having their own separate special operations package or entity and having to front up the cost for all of that. So training and preparedness, we could go over some ways that we could start at very reasonable ways, start training personnel on building construction, technical rescue response, structural collapse, start giving training to personnel so that they could identify hazards easier, maybe identify areas where they could work around or that they know they need to stay away from. So if we could provide some sort of training in regard to these types of incidents, then we can make sure that personnel are more obliged to stay safe when responding to these types of calls as well. Community awareness. So the communities should always be involved. They are stakeholders within, and it's imperative that they are aware of the challenges, and if it's an issue that they feel is important and they're the ones providing the funding, then they should be known. They should be let known about what we're missing as a department in order to respond to their emergencies. So if there's something that we don't have that we probably should have, then they need to be involved in that process and they need to know about that as well. The limitations for the department, that's a huge thing for the stakeholders. They need to know that. And as I said, the alternative solutions and overall long-term planning for this. So we need to develop a strategic plan for the emergency response, considering future needs as well as the immediate needs, and how can we improve emergency response capability in the area for the community. All right. So this is question number 2 now. And question number 2 states, what would be your response to establishing a special operations team for structural collapse? Okay, so pretty easy. Several factors. A lot of them kind of sound similar to the first question, but several factors that we will go over would include assessing needs based on frequency, which we had kind of talked about, impact of response time delays, current resources available, grants or financing, joint training, continuing education, stakeholders, and long-term planning. So, a lot of this might sound a little similar to question number 1, but in order to establish a team, we need to obviously assess the frequency. Like I said, high risk, low frequency event for the most part, unless we live in an area where that's prone to airstrikes or landslides, earthquakes, then it might not be so low frequency anymore. So what are the odds that this incident can happen within the city or within the county, within the region XYZ? Response time delay. Structural collapse is a slow process in itself. There is a great opportunity to make saves because of void spaces inside of a collapse. So there is a very good chance that there are survivors, especially there was a couple survivors in the Surfside collapse in Miami. So for very well over 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, it's just getting to them quickly, identifying where they're at, making sure we're picking up the right type of debris and moving it, not shifting the pile and making conditions any worse. So delays in medical care, delays in access to the victims, all need to be discussed, from response delays to the time the call is received, to asking for mutual aid, to getting to the pile with the victims, to setting up equipment. All these delays add up, and give the probability of pulling out a live victim less and less likely. Also evaluate current resources available. So do we have anything that could help us respond to this incident? And it sounds like the answer to that question is no. We are an EMS agency, so there's not much. As an EMS agency, we might be able to work the outside of the pile, the walking wounded, and depending on our training levels, maybe we can make a little bit of access on the pile to spots where we think is safe or we don't think is safe, and we're going to need a structural engineer there to kind of maybe guide us in the right direction on where we can and can't be, because it's a very dynamic and involving incident that's constantly changing minute by minute or move by move. So maybe we can get a little bit closer to the pile and start working on somebody in some confined areas and stuff like that, or maybe we can't, depending on the type of collapse that we are dealing with. So as an EMS agency, what we're going to be able to do when we arrive on scene is take command of the incident, establish an MCI system, a triage system, ensure that the hospitals have the ability to take X amount of patients that are going to be coming their way, multiple command posts, unified command system, so that everybody's working together, everybody's on the same page about what's going on. Mutual aid, not only from the one department that's coming from an hour away, but we might need regional support, state support, stuff at the federal level. So it could just be kind of adding. It could quickly become overwhelming with the amount of resources. So it is imperative that we have span of control over the incident. So you're going to need a lot of chief officers on the incident maintaining that control, and then logistics areas for chiefs. We need rehab areas. So there are a lot of things that we could begin setting up while the special operations team is en route, but the number one priority is life safety and getting in the pile and working the pile and giving them the best possible opportunity to come out alive from there. So all that other stuff is kind of after the fact. So if we can't get on the pile and start getting to work and treating people, then there's a significant delay, and that's kind of an issue with this. Next, we'll present a cost-benefit analysis. What is this going to cost you? What is this going to cost you to maintain for the years to come? What are some things that we could do to save money or, pull in resources from neighboring agencies and stuff like that, like collaboration. So what it sounds like is this is something that doesn't happen often. So my idea in the back of my head would be, let's start a regional team, pool together whatever people are interested in the organization and being involved in special operations. The more the merrier, but cost is going to come down, is going to be the key factor in this, right? Work together with neighboring agencies to see if they would show any interest in also training people, and get as many agencies nearby as you can, and then use a location as a kind of a centralized area where people can be responding within moments notice and activated as a team regionally, to operate, instead of relying on one organization that has special operations capabilities and technical rescue capabilities and structural collapse equipment, relying on one agency. That we have multiple agencies pooled together with trained personnel, equipment that they're trained to use, that they could put in to play right away instead of waiting, right? So if we could pool together resources, split the cost between 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 agencies nearby, then the entire cost of this, dramatically decreases, and then everybody kind of has a little bit of responsibility to provide funding, and that way everybody's got a little bit of skin in the game in terms of keeping up with training, equipment, and then everybody benefits, especially the stakeholders in the community. The stakeholders in the community benefit from the neighboring departments all having a regional type team to respond to some type of disaster like this. Training and certification needs to be upheld to a high standard. It's a lot of classes. It's at the minimum, it's 5 40-hour classes. Get you the base tech level knowledge that you need, and then there's multiple other courses that you need, from swift water, heavy rigging, vehicle machinery rescue, commercial machine rescue, tower rescue collapse, and the list goes on. And if you want the personnel to be ready, then they need to be a part of all that type of training and certification, like I just said. So, equipment and technology, as we talked about, and then I would try to gain community support and awareness, get the community to back up the EMS organization or the fire department, what have you, over the need for a technical rescue team or special operations team. Unfortunately, it takes a disaster in order for people to start putting their support money behind something, right? So look at the event that happened in Surfside, Miami. Building collapse. Then the chief in Palm Beach County wanted to know, if we had that happen today, how would we respond to that? And their answer was, we would not be able to respond to that. We don't have the resources, we don't have the available equipment, we don't have the trained personnel to even remotely respond to that incident. We would have to pool together different departments, organizations to come in, right? And the chief didn't like that, so they went out and they bought a boatload of equipment needed for structural collapse and started training personnel on that. So unfortunately, it always takes a disaster to get the ball rolling for organizations to start either funding something or asking for help at the state level, or which is through grants, as we know. So talking a little bit more about grants, there is it would be a hot topic, right, for this, considering grants to finance the teams. So there are grants available, as working for the city of Fort Lauderdale, we just got grants to get a bunch of probably like $75,000 worth of paratech equipment for structural collapse, which is kind of, and we also use it for heavy lifting of like commercial vehicles. So all completely free. Just there was a lot of legwork behind applying for the grant. So there are grants out there that will either support training and certification, or even back down to equipment. And once you start getting into FEMA level, you have type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 type teams, each with different abilities to do everything. Type 1 being the highest and being able to deploy all over the world, and type 5 being the least trained and kind of just staying in the area that they serve. Those types of teams dictate different types of grants, availability, reimbursement from the state, and things like that. So that would be a big topic to look into. Yeah. So what else do we got? Some more photos. This is from Surfside in Miami. So what would be your recommendation? So based on the information provided, my recommendation is to seek grant funding to start a technical rescue team with structural collapse capabilities. The response delay of 30 minutes to 1 hour is way too long. We need to have some sort of team that could at least get the ball rolling when they roll up on scene, and not just get out of the truck and do a lot of walking and looking around and have their hands in their pocket, not getting the scene taken care of. So everybody should be trained in building collapse and know the signs of building collapse, the dangers, different types of structures, and all that. But we should have a group of personnel, a part of a team with, depending on the size of the county, obviously, our team consists of 6 people at a minimum are on duty every single day that are trained in special operations, including rope rescue, machinery rescue, structural collapse. They're on shift every single day, so that's the minimum that we have, and then we could pull together resources from other cities or counties. So there should be a minimum amount of people on shift every single day with the available equipment to respond to said emergency and be able to start mitigating that emergency. You might not be able to solve the whole thing on your own, and that's okay. You might need resources and help from someone else, but at least you got the process started. You're making forward progress, and there's not that significant delay when somebody comes and nothing's done yet, and they're starting from the bottom to the top, and we're really doing a disservice to the citizens, to the visitors in the community. That's who ends up paying for this in the back end. So in the meantime, while securing funding, I would begin to train personnel in building construction. I would start putting members through the technical rescue class series, which we know is about 5 classes, 40 hours long each, and there's another 80-hour class thrown in there as well. I would really work hard in contacting nearby agencies that don't have a technical rescue team and combine efforts. That would give us the ability to start either a regional team for multiple agencies or combine money and split costs of training and equipment. So reaching out to other departments would be huge. If we could find a way to collaborate our efforts, train personnel, everybody puts skin in the game, everybody puts money in the game for equipment, resources, and then everybody gets the benefit, it seems like a no-brainer to me. So I feel like fiscally, financially, strategically for the future, that would be the best approach. Obviously, you're going to have somebody that takes charge of that effort. So you're going to need some type of chief officer or captain or somebody to be a regional team leader, right? Or be the designated liaison between the other organizations to kind of help collaborate and run efforts and keep the teams trained and funded and equipment available. So someone would have to take point on that. There would have to be multiple meetings on a monthly, weekly basis, whatever, going over expectations, XYZ, training, mutual aid training with nearby agencies would be huge. So that would be my recommendation for an agency that does not have special operations in it right now, and they're just an EMS-based agency, and they're relying on resources from neighboring or outside departments to provide them the assistance they need. Because on the day that you need it, it's going to be a day where that agency might be tied up on another incident, and they might not be able to send anybody. So that's not something I want any department or agency to go through, and that's obviously not something we want the community to have to go through when they're already suffering from a structural collapse. And on top of that, now they're stuck waiting for an extended period of time for a team to come. So that's all I got for those 3 questions on the what would you do recommendations for Chapter 1, Module 1 in the text. Appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation, watch this video, listen to my recommendations for the future of this EMS agency and organization, and hopefully they would consider those talking points and consider developing a team for their organization. Have a good day.